My name is Kayla, and MCTV is celebrating Women's History Month. Today we're interviewing City Councilwoman Amourence Lee from City of San Mateo. I'm Amourence Lee, San Mateo City Councilwoman.
What I want to ask you first is, what does Women's History Month mean to you?
It's really a time to reflect and celebrate. I always consider myself standing on the shoulder of many, and it's hard to kind of carve out that space to honor all of those folks in your life on like year round, although we should strive for that. But I always learn about a new person, a new woman, and sort of recall a new memory that helps ground me more deeper into my womanhood and my leadership and my life. And so, I think that storytelling and connection to history is really necessary to do the work to take us forward. And so for me, I think of it as a really important tradition and practice in my personal life.
What does the phrase "empowered women empower women" mean to you, and how do you live this in your daily life?
I love that saying. And there's another way to say it, which is, if you can see her, you can be her. And I, as the first Asian woman to hold the seat on the San Mateo City Council, I always went forward, thinking and committing to the vision that I can't be the last. And I'm constantly thinking about how I can build the bench. I'm working with young people and recruiting new leadership. I'm trying to change structures to open up representation for people and demographics that are voiceless in the current process, in the status quo. And so for me, it's very much a guiding principle. and I think that for me, it's also about the community, like building a more cohesive community of leaders, and that like the principle of like we all need to lift each other up, like that we can't, that nobody should be left behind. And that's the way that I try to lead and govern, and thinking forward to the next generation and how I can have a hand in making sure that the next generation looks like our community.
Who is the most influential woman you know? How does she inspire you?
I actually struggled with this question the most. I really did. And there are many women that have mentored me. I'm very blessed to have had, like, I have many fingerprints on me in terms of the women that have taken time to shepherd me into who I am today, and open those doors. I think, this last year, I very much hold the presence of my grandmother. She was 100 years old when she died, and I often reflect on how embodied she was as a powerful woman, in the midst of many constraints. When I look at her life and the kind of barriers that she faced, and the things that she couldn't have possibly known, just in terms of lack of information and lack of opportunity. And then I contrast that with my life and the lives of the women in our generation. I really do, I hold her story very close to me, because we have a lot more ceilings to break, right? And the challenges that she faced and overcame were many of the ceilings that I'm grateful that I don't have to break, right? Like that I didn't have to struggle as hard because of women in her generation, that they struggled for us to beat down the path. And so, Yeah, so for me, holding her story very tightly, especially in the wake of her death recently, is something that that is very present in my daily life.
As a woman being in a council member role, what obstacles do you face or have faced? What strategies do you use to overcome them?
I think that a lot of women are scrutinized for what they look like, and it's really interesting because the standard isn't what you say or do. It's how you look, and there's so many times that it kind of rears itself where I'm saying something or I'm doing something, I'm trying to push forward a policy, and and the feedback I get is, I really like that jacket you were wearing, or it would be better if you wore lipstick. and so it's really, it's interesting because the lens of where people's focus is so far from the work in some cases. And I think that as a woman, we're held to these impossible standards. The jacket is too red. It's not red enough. You're too young. No, you're too old. You're too experienced, but you're not experienced enough in this other way, right? And so there are these impossible standards that women are held to, and I think that it can be very defeating. It can be very demoralizing and frustrating and feel very unfair. And so the counter to that, the response to that, is to fully inhabit who we are, and to own it, and not ask for permission, right? And so there are these like voices that I hear externally, but also internally. And how do I manage that as a leader? And how do I not let that that dampen my voice, right? So it's deep work. It honestly is. It's very powerful and deep work. And that's what I want for every woman. Be who you are. And there's no one else can do that, right? Yeah. You're the only one in this world that is you. So that's I think my message and my light.
I've learned that you've done a lot for the families within the community, such as being like an executive director for the Parents Club of Palo Alto and Menlo Park, and being the co-founder of the Parents Club on board. Why did you choose to take on these positions?
Those specific positions, I've been drawn to work that empowers the family, community, and I think a lot of that has to do with my own personal background. So I come from a huge family. I'm the oldest of 8. I have 5 adopted sisters from China, and I grew up as sort of in like a quasi commune. Okay, and so this idea of like pulling up chairs to the table to create more space and having an inclusive family, inclusive community. Choosing your family, choosing your community, like that's like literally my dining room table, right? And I feel very strongly about the practice of parenting and the practice of community building, right? And you build the family structures and you build the community structures that you want to be a part of. Like this is the ultimate form of agency to enact who we are and what our values are and define those in practice, right? And you do that within your family and community structures. And so, putting my energy, putting my skills to doing that at scale, and helping to make that vision possible, parenting can be incredibly isolating in this country, right? It can be very disempowering, especially to women who are taking the lion's share of work, sacrificing their careers to prop up the dysfunctions in our school system and the lack of funding in our systems, right? We need to be supporting each other in across every aspect of raising families and being healthy families. And so when my family personally fell apart, right, struggling with mental illness, struggling with addiction, it was good policy. Like, I fell back on safety nets and community supports that act like in a very real way saved my life. And so my entire purpose here, like in this lifetime, is to pay that forward, is to make sure that those structures catch other people, right? And one of the most defining moments of my life was coming into motherhood, right? And I could not do this work without the collective. That doesn't happen without investment, personal investment, but it can happen at scale in a way that will make families healthier, will make motherhood and parenthood more, easier, because like the challenges are there, right? Everyone's really struggling, everyone's really tapped out, and we need to support women. We need to support our women's success.
From coming from all these positions, like, what do you want the end result to be after you committing so much time into these positions?
I think I touched on this before, but I can only take something so far, right? And so the end result is that we create structures that has opened the door wide enough that the next generation can take up the charge, right? And keep on blowing those doors open. That's my hope, is that I will have created enough lasting institutional change that the next generation that is ushered in doesn't have to beat the path down as hard as I did.
What lasting impact did it make on the families you've helped so far?
I would like to think that, we ease the burden of decision making, and in some ways kind of like there's so much wisdom in women, right? And we need to create structures that leverage that and share that collective knowledge. Because when you tap into it, it's a wealth of resource. And so my hope is that, is that people benefit from that information to make better decisions for their own family planning.
This is going to be a long question, but what do you find important about helping the community by being in commissions and subcommittees such as ABAG, C/CAG, HOPE, SFO Roundtable, SMC Pre-Hospital Emergency Medical Services, LPMG, and SBWMA?
Well, sorry, what was the question?
Basically, what do you find important, or what do you find important about helping the community within being part of those commissions and subcommittees?
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. It was a lot.
What is important? Well, I think that the importance is not just the content of the work, but working at a regional level, right? And it's not enough to just clean your own house, right? Because like the house is in a city, in a county, in a state, in a country, and so for me, being able to bridge the regional work and the regional strategy and make sure that there's synergy and resources and locally informed strategy makes regional strategy better, right? And vice versa. Like that needs to be a feedback loop. And it takes people serving in both capacities at a city level and at a regional level to make good policy, right? And so for me, that's one of the most exciting parts of the job, is to kind of hold those two camps. And it can get really granular down to the city level, where you're at a block level, right? You're at a neighborhood block level. or you're dealing with, a section of the city that's, fronting the bay and thinking about sea level rise, but for, I think LPMG for me is one of the most impactful groups that I'm a part of, because we're getting updates on Caltrain and high speed rail. And so, those are going to be game changers. And the new Caltrain business plan is very forward looking, and they're actually applying I think a really well considered equity plan that's going to lower costs. It's going to increase service, and it's going to make Caltrain not just a commuter rail, but a system, a transit system that everyone should be able to use, right? Not just white collar folks. Right. And so having more service on off-peak hours, having, at a price point that will actually make taking transit a real option, that's where the city needs to go. The region needs to go, and transit needs to go. I grew up in Boston, and I lived in New York City for 7 years, and then I lived in China. I learned how to drive when I was 30 years old because I never needed to know how to drive. I took public transit and I rode my bicycle. That was like the first 3 decades of my life. It's not to say I never got in a car. Of course I did. I needed to. However, the vast majority of the way that I would navigate these cities was on my bicycle and through public transit. And I think that has to be the future of the Bay Area in California. And we are way behind. We have a long way to go, but it is important to be part of, pushing forward. And that's the work that's happening right now.
What did you take away from being involved in the decision-making process within these committees and subcommittees?
What did I take away? I think that, in some ways I kind of spoke to this. I think that the takeaway is bring the regional strategy and the regional resources, the collaborative opportunities, and back to the city. So, one concrete example is as just let's take LPMG, right? We can't, the cities will not physically, in terms of an infrastructure, will be grossly bottlenecked, right? If we don't have grade separation on the tracks, because you can't increase service, right, on a rail line that bisects the city. And when people need to have east-west connections, right? You can't cut off an east-west, access point in the city. But we also need to increase service of Caltrain, right? So how do you accomplish those two things? They're diametrically opposed. The way to do it is you either underground or you go up, right? We need to have grade separations at downtown San Mateo. And so we are, as we look forward and vehemently and adamantly support where Caltrain is going, we also need to plan for that as a city and make sure that that our circulation will continue to flow and people can get where they need to go, right? And redevelop the downtown, which has I think we have 6 grade crossings, right? And each one, if we were to build a grade separation, is $30 million. That's not a small price tag, right? And so it's going to take a lot of planning and a lot of resources to enact this vision, so that we can have both, right? And that's what we need. We need to have both.
Why is it important that more women are represented in the city's leadership roles?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that, women especially lead through our personal experience, right? And I think that as we expand the face and the voice of what it means to be, in leadership, and who is qualified to represent us, right? We are reshaping that model and reshaping it into a female form to create room, right? It's like, sometimes it takes a couple elbows. and so, my thinking, and I think that, there's conventional wisdom and business wisdom and analysis all shows that, we come to better decisions when there's more diversity of perspective and skill, professional background, personal experience at the table. Those are the ingredients that it takes to make good policy and have strong leadership that actually represents and meets the needs of the communities today and tomorrow. So without that, we are impairing ourselves. So for me, it's really a mandate of making sure that our representative bodies reflect the community. And you do that by opening the doors to leadership.
What message would you like to send out to women and girls everywhere?
Well, if we go back to the saying of, if you can see her, you can be her. My message to women and girls is that you might not see her, but you can still be her. And that there are going to be many places and many spaces that you won't see someone like yourself, right? But we need to create a new generation of leadership, of trailblazers, right? That will continue pushing into those spaces. I was the first, I won't be the last, but somebody has to step into the first, right? We have to get those firsts in the door. And my message to girls and women is, if I can do it, you can do it, right? And that's it's really about recognizing the potential, right? And the need. And that what ultimately convinced me to serve, it wasn't because I ticked, the right boxes. It was really enough people calling me to serve, and me at a fundamental level recognizing and accepting that I had something really important to contribute. And I would say to every woman and girl in this world, so do you.
Thank you for watching this MCTV original. To support local production, donate at mctv.tv. Thank you.